Awesome. So you know what? Let's get this thing going because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time here. Paula, welcome. Appreciate having you here. Why don't you kick us off by telling us about you and your experience in crypto, and take it away.
Take it away. Okay, you might have to stop me because I might go on for a little bit too long. Hey, everybody, and welcome from Ireland. It's the middle of the afternoon here in Ireland. My name is Paula, and I'm the founder of A Block of Crypto, and give you a quick introduction of what A Block of Crypto is, and then I'll tell you kind of how I got there. A Block of Crypto, we onboard and retain users in the Web3 industry. We focus on end users. We don't focus on developers. We help to bring grannies to Web3 to help them get their wallets and help all users of all levels. And we've lots of courses there that are free. Our website, you're currently shown there, we are actually upgrading, and we're going to have an amazing gamified app launching at the end of the year. But all our courses and training is free there. So just a bit of background then on myself. I'm in online education since before we had online education, when we had CD-ROM. When Udemy came along, I joined the Udemy revolution of online learning, and I quickly became a Udemy top selling instructor. On Udemy, I don't know, I probably have about 130,000 students on Udemy. I branched out across different learning platforms as well. There's the likes of Allison.com. I have a similar, if not larger, number over there. There's FutureLearn, there's Skillshare. There's quite a few of them, and on each one of them, I'd have quite a large following of students. Sometimes I wish I put the effort into YouTube rather than them, but I guess it depends on, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. I used to teach Microsoft Excel to accountants, to professionals. That was my skill. And in around 2016, 2017, lots of things happened on the internet. I was a content creator. I had a fantastic blog. It was a top 200,000 blog per Alexa rankings. And just the web industry changed considerably around 2016, 2017. There used to be a platform called Google Plus, if anybody remembers it. Google Plus closed down, and anybody that ran a community on it were given an option to move their community and given the time to do it. But once you set a community up somewhere, it's kind of almost impossible to move the community. So I lost a community because of a centralized organization deciding they didn't want that product anymore.
Do you have any competitors that are doing similar setups that you have right now?
There are some similar competitors out there. They're not doing it on a decentralized environment.
Yeah, I'm wondering on the decentralized side.
We're really on our own at the moment for that,
right,
when it comes to quantum anyway. There are people that are doing compute on a decentralized scale. That we're not claiming that, we're the only ones in that realm, but from a quantum sense we are. Yeah, but the nearest competitor would be somebody like D-Wave. Or IBM would be another one. There's a really interesting statistic. We put it out. I believe it was $1.20 on IBM per second of runtime, and it's 12 cents per second on DYNEX to run the same compute.
Okay. Wow. Significant difference right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, because there's a lot of the decentralized compute competitors out there, but they're not even touching the same things that you are. And that's good to really define and separate them. Because that area of the market, in my perspective, seems quite saturated right now. It's just pretty much everyone's picking up on that same time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, we knew that when we started doing the quantum side of things, right? It was a really large niche. It's almost a niche of a niche, right? Because quantum's a niche in its own right, and we're a little subsection of quantum. But we believe that, there are merits to just what we're building right now, where it comes down to overhead cost, right? If we can bring that barrier much lower, that now you bring in the realm of that small businesses can start using quantum algorithms, right? Or brand new developers can realize that, oh my god, quantum's now available, I can learn how to program this thing, right? And suddenly you move that technology on. truly believe that the only reason why quantum hasn't become more mainstream than it already is today is down to cost, like barrier to entry. It's too high. It basically restricts it to a very small amount of people that actually get the luxury to use that technology. And to me, that's the wrong way of that kind of technology becoming available.
And then you talked about some of the modeling that you did for them. How I see DYNEX, or how I saw DYNEX originally, was that it was strictly number crunching, but when you bring up models, it always makes me think of AI. Can I personally get some clarification on the differences between what DYNEX does versus what some of these other compute resource companies do in regards to number crunching versus AI?
Yeah. So you're talking about like things like large language models, for example.
Yes.
And things like ChatGPT, Llama, and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So we are in the process of bringing out our own. So Chris has just Chris has already.
That was convenient. Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
There you go.
Thanks, but we're working on something that will be effectively the very first quantum-based LLM. And that's quite tricky in a quantum environment because there's variables that have to be translated from a quantum formula to something that a computer can actually read and use. We've already demonstrated something called QNLP, or quantum natural language processing. That's the fundamental underpinning that is the talking mechanism between you and, say, a ChatGPT. And that's where basically the large language model plugs into. The next was obviously transformers. Those are the things that can actually give it actions to do. So you tell it to write a piece of code that needs a transformer in order to, translate all of that into a format that's usable. So we're almost there. We think we'll be there by the end of the year. And then it's going to be a case of seeing how fast we can train ChatGPT. We know roughly how long it takes, the big players in the industry to train their models. It's weeks, if not months. What if we could do it in under an hour? That would be pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that we're working on.
Okay.
But in relation to what you said about like where do we stack up compared to others? So a lot, the rest of the compute sector, right, are all working on standard traditional models. So that's, very much computation like we're all understanding right now. One action in, one action out, blazing fast, but it's still one in, one out. Whereas what we can do is go, I need to do 100 variables and do them all at the same time. And then they all come back at the same time. So think of it like a big spider's web at that point, right? We can spider web out to a much bigger search pattern than what you can with normal compute.
Let's keep flipping through. I don't know if you want to. This isn't really a question, but
I think it might be an insult.
Where to begin with this one? So I've spoke about this before, right? Flux is doing something similar, but not something similar, right? It's compute, but it's not the same as what DYNEX is doing. If you've got Flux at one end of the compute scale, right, they're trying to do a full infrastructure system, right? So that's cloud-based services, storage, VPN, the whole industry, right? So they're trying to take an entire Web 2 subset of functions and switch them over to Web 3. So Zapira actually does the perfect one there, right? So you could fire up a DYNEX Docker on Flux if you really wanted to. I mean, I personally use Octaspace. We already have direct connections into Octaspace with DYNEX as part of our partnership. You can actually use the drop down, select DYNEX SDK and hit install, and it will deploy an SDK straight to Octaspace's infrastructure. So yes, you can do the same with Flux. We are potentially looking at talking to Flux about dropping our SDK on their launchers. I'm very open to that. I don't see why we shouldn't. But they're basically two opposite ends of the scale is the best way to describe it.
It's not even on my radar. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I know that the beginner's block had put a comment in there. And
I was just about to pull it up.
That. But my personal opinion, it hasn't been on my radar either. With L2s, I just feel like they're a dime a dozen. I know the importance of them, but I also, in my mind, I feel like when Ethereum fixes their issues, then what happens to the L2s? That goes for Matic included, which is also a pretty big name L2. Yeah. So that's why I lean my focus to like L1s that have already solved the issues that Ethereum has created for themselves.
Yep.
But again, that's just my point, and that's just on a technology standpoint. But when you're talking about, can you make this? I mean, that could work out for you, right?
Yeah,
and
that's sort of one of the reasons why I'm talking about. You can solve a lot of problems with cost and fees and everything else like that, but who's actually using it? And that's like the biggest use case behind it is who's developing it and who's actually trying to build on top of it. And that's why I was pointing out the developers report, talking about the ecosystems that are actually being used right now. And it's one of the top 5 ones that are being used on top of older ones like Avalanche. Avalanche has a pretty big network, and it's been utilized a lot. It meets a lot of the same requirements. Do I think it's going to grow past the market cap of Avalanche? I don't think so. But in a bull market case, it getting into double digits of the $1 billion category, like $20 billion. I think that's completely reasonable because when it had launched and it had gone up to $2.5, $3, it was already at $15 billion or something in that range. So it had already grown an extremely enormous amount in a short period of time when it launched. And that could be about hype. But after the hype and everything has built out, we're about 1.5 years into this chain now. And there's still people eagerly trying to get into it and develop on top of it. It's a selling feature for me.
That does show a lot. I'm going to see if I can get
and
some.
I brought up Automatic Beats comment here off of what FF was saying, and I'm with you, FF. I mean, I don't know that ETH is going to fix their issues.
Yeah, they're not.
But the other L1s that have the better chains, I think, are just going to eventually surpass ETH, and there'll be less need for L2s. My opinion.